Here's kind of a quick overview of some of the things that we're going to cover in this training. We're going to talk about the model view, which is what you see on the left-hand side of the screen here. It's similar to a CAD package where you can rotate and view different things on the model. Let's really jump into the software now. Here's our first example problem. You've got NLign installed, and your boss comes to you and says, hey, I have a presentation that shows a cross-sectional view of the aircraft with a view of all the records displayed onto that aircraft. So the first thing we need to do is make sure we have an asset loaded. We need to run basically a blank filter to pull in all the records onto the 3D CAD model. And we need to orient the model to the desired orientation. We need to turn on a clipping plane and then basically snap the picture. Those are the steps we're going to take to work through this example together. Like I mentioned, where you find the assets, you go File, select Assets. If you've loaded NLign before, it remembers which asset you had previously loaded, and that will be the default. If not, if this is your first time loading it, it will prompt you which asset you want loaded. If you have multiple assets, this is where you pick between them. You go File, select Assets, and you load your asset. And then the very next thing we're going to do is load a default data set. The default data set is typically blank. Unless you've gone in and played around in here previously, there shouldn't be anything inside this default data set. So the default data set is basically a blank filter. It takes everything in the database or on the server and pulls it straight to your screen. So on my view window here, in the upper left-hand corner, I have this little play button right next to this drop-down that says default data set. So if I run the default data set, it pulls in all the records that are in my database. There I can see all these little red and yellow circled dots are the different records that are in my database. So once I've got the data onto my model, I can use my mouse to control the model. So if you've ever used a CAD package previously, some of these controls will be very familiar to you. So you can click and pan, you can right click and start rotating when you right click and then drag. To set the center of rotation, you click on the model with a right mouse click. To zoom, you use the scroll wheel. To select a part or item on the model, you just click on it. You can toggle the visibility of the part with the H key on your keyboard or in the layers tree with the eyeball icon. So I can rotate, I can zoom with the scroll wheel, I can pan by left clicking and dragging. I can also select different parts. So as I click on the part, you may notice it highlights in the parts tree what that part number is, and vice versa. If I click over here in the parts tree, it will highlight the part over in my view window. If I right click and drag, it will rotate. And if I just right click once, it will reset my center of rotation. Another way I can reset my center of rotation is clicking up on the gear icon, and I can set the center of rotation to a specific point. And I just click on my model, and now I'm rotating about the front nose of the aircraft. If I'm working at the forward end of the aircraft, it just makes things easier for me if I can rotate about there instead of rotating about the center. I can reset the center of rotation back to the center of the model. And then as I talked about, I can zoom in and out with the scroll wheel here. I can hit Control and select multiple things, or if I've got multiple parts in a row, I can hold the Shift button and then select all those parts at once. So if your admin loaded in the models in kind of an organized fashion from a CAD package, you should have some type of a layers tree that's similar to this, where you can find the assemblies highlighted in here. Okay, so I need this picture for my presentation. I've got the results displayed on top of my model. Now I need to create a cross section. So if I come up to the gear icon and click on manually edit the clipping planes, what this does is it allows me to turn off the automatic clipping and then manually adjust the clipping plane here. I'm going to click and drag this. You can see the wing starting to disappear, starting to be cross-sectioned or cut off. I'll adjust this until it sits where I want it like that. So I can adjust the far clipping plane as well if for some reason I want to clip the far end of the aircraft. But for now, I'm just going to adjust the near clipping plane. I'm going to hit OK. And then there's several ways that I can basically use this picture for my presentation. I can click on this icon up here. This icon is used throughout NLign, this blue piece of paper with the orange arrow to the right, to export things. Whenever I see this icon, it's typically going to help me grab things out of NLign. So I can either save this view to an image file, or I can copy it to the clipboard. So if I save this as an image file, bring up the save window for Windows, I can give it a name, cross-sectional view, go ahead and save that right here. So now I've got the picture ready for my presentation. One thing to keep in mind with the cross-section is this cross-section is not fixed in space. It is with reference to the camera view angle. So as I rotate the aircraft, my cross-section will also rotate. So keep that in mind when you're working with the aircraft. So as I zoom in and out, the clipping plane will also adjust based off of my camera angle. So another thing I can do if I don't want a solid part is similar to other CAD packages, I can play with the visibility of the different parts on the model. So as I click on the different parts, I can make them transparent. I'm actually going to turn off my clipping plane here. Put it back to automatic. I can change parts to wireframe. And I can also hide parts. And there's 3 separate ways I can do this. I can toggle the visibility of the part with the H key on my keyboard. And you may notice this eyeball icon turns to eyelashes when I do that. I can click on this eyeball or the eyelash icon, and that will also toggle the visibility of that part on and off. Or I can hit on the hide all models icon up at the top. Now that will hide absolutely everything. But if I click on the top level and then display the models as a solid, it'll bring everything back again. Another feature that I have access to is as I click on the individual models, I have options to change the model color over here on the left. So I can pick, a specific color and kind of draw the eye to that specific part. So if this example in the presentation, if I'm trying to highlight a part that has a lot of defects on it, I could change its color to something that pops out a little more to draw the attention to that specific part in my presentation. Thank you, everyone.